22 years old, already a two-time Champions League winner. What about that?
Insanity. Now, in their group, it was Netherlands, Mexico, Belgium, and South Korea. Now, I shared on the Twitter page, the South Korean goalkeeper's haircut is glorious. A beautiful, long mullet effort, which really caught the eye. But they became the whipping boys of the group a little bit, only picked up 1 point. Belgium finished third, and Holland and Mexico progressed. So this, for Mexico, they went through, but this was the start or the second kind of tournament of their, what is now known as the curse of the fifth game, where they have never been able to get past the last round of 16. A spoiler alert again, in case you've not watched the 98 World Cup. But in this group, the results that kind of catch the eye, we have Holland beating South Korea 5-0. But then they drew to Belgium and drew against Mexico. So they didn't have a convincing start, but they got through, and their best football was yet to come, I think.
And then another interesting group, one of the few countries that had already fully split up from Yugoslavia was Croatia, who made it to the round of 16 together with Argentina in a group that also featured Jamaica and Japan. If you haven't watched this documentary, just type France 98 World Cup on YouTube. You should find the Eurosport documentary, and actually seeing the Jamaicans turning up in France with their long dreadlocks and like their smiles and their like reggae attitude. I was like, heck yeah. It's always nice to see the Jamaicans.
It's so great. And when he references the fact that most of them have just come from London, I was like, yes, most of the Jamaican fans have just crossed from London. It's amazing.
And another thing that I think is important to mention is that this was the beginning. We mentioned some of the technology that was coming out, but people just didn't have as much access as we do now, of course, to other people's cultures and traditions. And so the World Cup was actually a moment of cultures meeting each other. And whenever I think about France 98, I think a lot of these like clips on television of these fans with their flags from Jamaica or, I don't know, Paraguay, just celebrating in the main square in Paris. I don't know, it was interesting to see back then. You didn't have that many opportunities to explore different cultures, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of, we talked about it like being the opening of kind of the global football kind of thing. I think Italia 90 changed a lot of things, but by 98 it was in full swing of like, it's a global brand, and we're all kind of starting to see football from around the world, starting to see different footballing cultures. Yeah, I agree. I think, and I remember being quite excited at the time about Jamaica being there. It just seemed really kind of random that they were there, but unfortunately their only ever World Cup appearance. But
yeah, they did
anyway,
win one
Argentina
game.
would go through to top the group, 3 wins out of 3, and Croatia went through second, winning 1-0 in 2 games and beating Jamaica 3-1. This Croatia team really were one of the surprise packages of this tournament. I think it's easy to say. They've always just seemed to have a kind of great batch of gifted players, and I think this was the first time people realised it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before we go to England, Rory, because I know that you kind of want to talk about that one, we've got the other remaining group is the one featuring Germany, who would advance together with the former Republic of Yugoslavia with 7 points, leaving behind, packing their bags, Iran and the United States.
Now, I think, funnily enough, the most interesting thing about this group is the 2 teams that went out. So this gave us a game between 2 countries that have quite a heated history, between America and Iran. Now, Iran would win the game 2-1. But I think the greatest moment here is the fact that the head of Iran had banned the players from shaking hands with Americans. So what they did instead was just take a group team photo, which I think is a really nice, iconic image from this World Cup. There was a bit of trouble in the stands, but I think in general it was a nice kind of advertisement for football, bringing the world together, all those cliches. But I think it was very nice. Germany got through this group in not a very convincing fashion, and I think this wasn't a great German generation of players, and it would kind of lead on to this big revolution that Germany would have in the future in their nurturing of talent. I think this was kind of the start of it. It was a good team, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, they had a lot of good individual players. They had Matthaus, they had Birov, they had Klinsmann, but altogether it just didn't feel like that.
And you have to remember, a lot of those players would almost come into the end. Like, this was Klinsmann's last tournament. Matthaus must have been getting on by 98. Like, it feels like it was a bit of a changing of the guard in Germany.
But Matthaus was 37 in 98 already.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think Germany, obviously being efficient, they still went through top, but it wasn't as convincing as they'd have liked, I'm sure.
One last thing that I gotta confess I really loved about that documentary is seeing 19-year-old Dejan Stankovic scoring for Yugoslavia. That was beautiful to see. By the way, guys, apparently only Inter players appreciate our posts on Instagram. And so far, we got likes from, Sebastian Veron, yes. Javier Zanetti, he liked our post today. Yes. And then also Christian Panucci, who had a brief spell at Inter. But yeah, they all liked our posts. AC Milan players, nowhere to be seen.
We don't want them. We don't want them. It's fine.
And finally, to close up the groups, we've got Romania and England advancing to the round of 16, and Colombia and Tunisia packing their bags and boarding their planes. What happened with that group, Roy?
So England, as always, not particularly convincing in the groups. They beat Tunisia 2-0 through goals from Shearer and Scholes. Good start to the tournament. Then we would go on to draw. We eventually lost to Romania. Now, this was the big moment in the group. Romania were a very good team. They had Georgi Hagi, Dan Petrescu. It was a very good generation of Romanian players, but England should have won that game. They hit the post when it was 1-1. Romania went to the other end and won. We then comfortably beat Colombia with Valderrama, another notable haircut. We beat them 2-0, mostly remembered by Beckham. It was Beckham's first outstanding free kick for England. I think it's the first one that sticks clearly in my mind. I remember watching the Colombia game and the Romania game, but it meant that we went through the group second, which means that we would have to go on to face Argentina in, I think, one of the greatest World Cup games in history. Now, if we'd have finished first, we still would have got Croatia. Now, as we've said, Croatia were one of the best teams in this tournament, so there was no real easy draw for England, but us getting Argentina was interesting. Now, I remember as a kid, the Argentina thing was a big thing. It was, in the 90s, there was a lot more like no surrender and 5 German bombers and all this nationalistic kind of spirit. It was very present in the 90s, and the England fans were causing a lot of trouble abroad. The French police definitely had a lot of work on their hands with us, and this Argentina game, I think, just kind of added to that a little bit.
So I think for our younger listeners, we got to mention, well, if I was a younger listener, I would be like, why the fuck would England and Argentina absolutely despise each other?
I don't know if I want to get into this, man.
Well,
basically, they have islands that we think are ours. They think it's theirs.
They are slightly off the coast of the UK, so you could argue that they are way more Argentinian than they are British. But besides this, following the Falkland Wars, known as the Malvinas War in South America, there was a big clash in the World Cup between England and Argentina, featuring the Maradona game, right?
Yeah, and you have to remember there's a lot of football context here as well, like the hand of God. The countries have never liked each other. It all leads from the Falklands, right? So this game, I watched it back, it has everything. So at the beginning, within 5 minutes, Simeone dives and is asking for one of our players to be sent off. He gets a penalty, Batistuta scores. Then we go up the other end, get a penalty. Shearer scores. Then the biggest moment, I think, follows shortly afterwards when David Beckham kicks out at Diego Simeone, and I still cannot forgive Simeone for this moment. Like, Beckham was childish and stupid, and it was a kick out. I can see that, but the way Simeone hits the deck still makes me angry. So Beckham is sent off. Despite this, England go 2-1 up through that goal from Michael Owen. This was when Michael Owen really announced himself on the world stage. I think at that point he was the best youngster in world football. The run he makes, the touch, he takes it to the edge of the area, almost to put Roa in the worst position he can be in, and hits it across him into the top corner. I remember that goal so vividly and being so excited by it. Like, I could not believe that England had scored such an amazing goal. I don't know. I went crazy. Then Argentina have a very well-worked free kick to Zanetti. They catch the English defence sleeping, 2-2. We're down to 10 men. We have a free kick, corner. The ball comes across and Sol Campbell jumps, heads it into the goal. Insanity. I remember my house exploded. 3-2, near the end of the game. We're going to go through with 10 men. This is incredible. This doesn't happen. It gets ruled out for an Alan Shearer elbow, which, when you watch it back, his elbow does hit the keeper, right? But the keeper has already lost the ball by that point. Like, the ball has gone past it. Anyway, the goal's disallowed. We then go up to the other end. After that, Argentina break straight away. The England players are still celebrating. They take a quick goal kick. The England players are celebrating at the side of the pitch. They have to run back, and a last-ditch tackle stops them from scoring, right? Like the Argentinians. Anyway, we managed to save that, and we have another handball turned down. It was, looking back, it's a definite penalty. It's not given. Anyway.
No VAR at the time.
Yes, no VAR. It goes through extra time, into penalties. Because it's England and penalties, of course, we lose. Paul Ince misses, David Batty misses, and England are out. I remember being so upset. And just, I think it was one of the first times I realised that sport isn't fair.
Yeah, I realized that during the final. But yeah, Argentina did win in penalties against England, and they would meet the winner of Netherlands-Yugoslavia, which were the Netherlands, in the quarterfinals. Italy-Norway in the round of 16 was the opposite of Argentina-England. A very boring game. I had to rewatch the highlights because I did not recall it. It really felt, as the commentator says multiple times, like the two teams were sort of, trying to study their opposition. They weren't really taking any initiative. And then when the moment came for Italy, they left it to 24-year-old Christian Vieri, who was, man, what a forward he was, Christian Vieri. The only thing I don't like looking back at his career is how many teams he's played for.
He never stayed still, right?
He never stayed still. He had quite the personality, quite the character, but what a player he was. He just shoulders off the defender. He's completely alone. He has to do it on his own. Goal in the net, and Italy run away 1-0 winners. And they would meet France in the quarterfinal, who won with the first golden goal of the tournament against Paraguay.
Yeah, golden goal from Laurent Blanc. But I just wanted to quickly say, I really liked the celebration with Del Piero and Vieri. I think it's that game where they just sit down. I just quite like it. I don't know, it looks quite cool. It's a really good photo. But anyway, yes,
it's it's Vieri scoring, and then he just goes and he sits down. He crosses his legs and he sits down. And Vieri, Del Piero comes and he's like, "Hey, get up!" And then he's like, "No, you want to sit down? I'll sit down with you." And they just sit in front of each other and looked at each other for a second.
I really like that photo.
Other notable games, Brazil defeating Chile 4-1 with a brace from Ronaldo and another brace from Cesar Sampaio. Salah's goal for Chile was not enough.
I also want to say that Salah's goal, unfortunately for him, that was the goal that made him Chile's all-time top goal scorer. Yeah. And they were 4-0 down, and he would have been so happy that he broke the record, but then, we're 4-0 down. So I wanted to give him props for at least that moment for him, right? I think that's a big moment.
And Brazil would then meet in the quarterfinals Denmark, who had run out 4-1 winners against Nigeria with goals from Müller, Laudrup, Sand, and Helveg.
Thomas Helveg, do you remember that guy?
I remember. a classmate of mine who kept calling me when we were in elementary school, Thomas Elveg, for some reason. I was Tommaso and he called me Thomas Elveg. Hey, Thomas Elveg. And I was like, okay, fine.
I think this is another game for the Nigerian goalkeeper. I don't want to beat him up too much, but he really needs to forget this game. He really has an absolute nightmare. But yeah, I think Nigeria were found out a bit here. This is a very good